Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the MAC Chamber's Power Hour Business Development Virtual Live Stream, proudly presented by Google. My name is Fidel Mienzo, COO at MAC Chamber, formerly Midlands African Chamber Inc., and I'll be your host for today's section. Tonight's discussion is titled Building a Profitable Business Model, and I'll and is all about helping small businesses understand how to manage their economics, specifically their revenue, margins, volumes, and operating leverage to create sustainable growth. Our featured speaker is Kiley Phelps, a highly respected business strategist and educator known for helping entrepreneurs unlock their business potential by mastering their financial levers. Kiley Phelps brings deep expertise in business modeling and strategic planning for small enterprises. Kiley Phelps serves as the SBDC Center Director for the Omaha region at the Nebraska Business Development Center. Her counties of service include Douglas, Sarpy, and Washington. Kiley is an Omaha native and committed to fostering economic growth through entrepreneurship in her community. In her current role, she leads a team of graduate students, assistants, and works closely with business owners to navigate critical aspects of their business development process, including business planning, financial strategies, and operational improvements. Phelps also oversees outreach initiatives, delivers training programs, and cultivates relationships with key stakeholders to strengthen the regional business ecosystem. Her professional background spans a variety of areas, including data analyst and corporate purchasing. Before becoming the Omaha Center Director, Kiley was working as a graduate assistant business consultant for NBDC. A passionate advocate for continuous learning and improvement, Kiley has earned her bachelor's degree and master's degrees in business from UNO and recently completed the Economic Development Finance Professional Certificate course. Kiley is passionate about helping business owners succeed and playing a key role in growing Omaha's thriving entrepreneurial community. Kiley, we are honored to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, the honor is mine. I reading my bio makes me feel so humbled, I guess. So thank you for that wonderful introduction, Fidel. And I'm very excited to be here and to talk about building a profitable business model with you all.
Absolutely. So I'll now turn it over to Kiley for her presentation. Kiley, you have 40 minutes for your presentation.
Great. Okay, so building a profitable business model. So a lot of people get into business to make money. So throughout these next 40 or so minutes, I'm going to go through some of the different key components that make up a profitable business model and how we can play around with some of those pieces to kind of maximize that profit. So if you have not heard of the Nebraska Business Development Center, we are a statewide resource to help business owners start or grow a business. And we have a variety of different services. So Fidel mentioned my counties of service being the Omaha Center Director, but really our services across the whole state, variety of different programs. So we're happy to connect and help you along your business owner journey or to talk more about some of these pieces that I'm going to be talking about here shortly. Okay, so here is a quick little review or a preview about what we're going to cover. So we will talk about the 4 different variables of a business model, which includes your revenue, volumes, margins, operating leverage. We can have some time for a Q&A and we will adjourn and send everyone along their way. Okay, so first we are going to understand how a small business can generate, measure, and manage all of those 4 financial variables within that economic model of their business. Similarly, we will evaluate how pricing, volume, and margins are going to impact the sustainability and the growth potential of the business. So those 4 pieces really are going to determine, are we making money or are we not? If we aren't, maybe what are some strategies for us to ensure that we can make money going forward? Okay, so I am referring to the economic model of a business. And if a business owner does not understand all of these 4 key elements in their relationship, they might experience challenges with profitability, which is not why people get into business. People, again, get into business to make money. So this is really getting at answering the question of how are you as an owner going to manage the money, manage the finances? Businesses create value for customers and the owners through economic returns, profitability. The value for the customers is the exchange of goods or services. And again, really this economic model just helps understand if your business is profitable and if you're moving forward to meet the goals that you set out to achieve with the business. Okay, so I have kind of alluded to this a little bit, and I like to refer to it as a puzzle because, and the little graphic on the screen there shows how they all fit together really nicely to form the economic model. These are all going to be 4 things that every business will need to consider as they are either getting ready to start or expand. And we'll go through each of the 4 in greater detail, but just as kind of a high-level overview, we start with revenue drivers. So this is looking at like, what are you going to be doing to make money? Are you going to be a specialist or are you going to be more of a generalist? So with revenue drivers, we can have a small quantity or a larger quantity. We'll talk about that here in just a couple slides. Margins are really important. Margins are the difference between your price and your cost to produce that specific item. And then the rest of that goes to covering your overhead and also to your profit. So it is very important to know what your margins are so you can figure out how much overhead you can afford, what your break-even point is going to be, which determines, again, profitability. So then volumes, this is looking at how many you need to sell. So if you are going with like the luxury high-end product, you probably don't need to sell as many products as if you are doing something on the lower end. So where you have to sell a lot to really earn your money. And then finally, operating leverage. So we'll talk about that a little bit here too. But all of these relate to profitability and also risk level. So revenue drivers could be risky if I have so many different options for my customers because maybe I'm spreading myself too thin and trying to be an expert in all the things. And that can be really difficult. If I have volumes, some risks could be seasonality. So if we're going into the summer, what does that mean if I'm selling snowshoes? Maybe it's not great. So there could be some risk associated with that too. But understanding how all of these 4 pieces connect help eliminate that risk and increase your profitability. Okay, so why does this matter to understand the economic model of a business? It really helps provide data that the management team can take to inform them about strategic decisions and goal setting, kind of where they want to be. Having that data is really beneficial so that you can make informed decisions. You can track trends. You can know maybe what to expect coming up. I also think it's very helpful to avoid maybe some expensive surprises. And again, if we know the risks ahead of time or the potential risks ahead of time, you can kind of manage those and get in front of them so they don't become a big problem. It also helps give an understanding of the cost of doing business. So this is related to the margin piece because it is going to cost you something to get customers to make your product. So what is that cost of doing business, and how does it relate to sales and also profitability? And then my favorite question that the economic model gets at is, are we making money, or are we just moving money from, okay, so money came in, my customers paid it, I had to pay my suppliers who I used to make my widget, and then I also had to pay rent and utilities, and I had to transfer money to do my next inventory order, and then there's really nothing left in the bank account at the end of the day. The understanding the economic model helps inform, okay, am I profitable? What is my cash like? So it's very important to kind of understand this context, how all four of the pieces connect to each other. So now we're going to go into a little bit of a deeper dive with all of the different pieces. So maybe you can start to see how they are going to connect to each other. Starting with revenue drivers, I think this is the most intuitive of the four because really it's what am I in business to do? So it's the source of sales dollars generated by the company's business activity. So what am I selling? This is where your income is going to be coming from. I kind of talked about some examples of narrow versus broad offerings. So narrow meaning I am a cake shop. All I am selling is decorated cakes. Now, a broad offering could be more of a bakery where they're selling bread and cookies, and maybe they do some cake orders, brownies, a variety of other pastries. So they're trying to appeal to maybe more people, more events. And as we go through these examples, I also want to make the note that not one strategy is better than the other. It all just kind of depends on what are the goals for the business and what the business owner wants a little bit and how they all connect to each other. I think that connection piece is the most important. So if you have a narrower amount of revenue drivers, then maybe you have higher sales volume or something like that. And I kind of mentioned this a little bit too, that if you have one revenue driver, so the cakes, for example, it allows you to have focus on that. Be really good at selling those cakes. And then if you have many drivers, that could also be a good thing because there is built-in diversity with that. So maybe people aren't interested in cakes, but they're really interested in croissants with the cookie dough on top. That might be late to the party as an example, but I know that was trending a little bit ago. So maybe if I am more of a broad bakery, I am more suitable to adapt to some of those trends that are going on, but it's also really hard to be good at everything. So if I am a baker, I probably know how to make a lot of things, but I probably have my specialty areas. So it makes it a little harder to have expertise in all of the different segments. So then more revenue streams doesn't always mean that's what we want or that's better. If you can manage and have the experience with the different revenue drivers, if you are still profitable when you add them, and you want to make sure that it is aligned with your capacity. So if you are already operating, oh my gosh, I am running my business constantly, I don't have time to think about adding another baked good to my lineup, then it's probably not in the cards, or it doesn't make strategic sense to do it right at that time. Some examples of revenue drivers, I gave the example of a cake, but just more broadly, it can come from your product sales, service fees as well. If I'm going to have a rental unit, the income from that, some Some different forms are like commission and memberships, contracts. Memberships are a really good revenue driver if it makes sense, because it's very predictable revenue. So you generally know how many people are going to be subscribing to your service month to month. Now there is going to be some churn, some people leaving, some people coming, going, but in general, it's very predictable, which can help with budgeting purposes and just makes it easier to kind of make some data-informed decisions for the business. And a membership doesn't work well for everyone, but it does have some nice kind of perks to it. Oh, okay. So I kind of gave this example a little bit just as I was talking. But this bakery that I'm giving you an example of, they are an example of someone that has a lot of different revenue drivers. So you can see on the screen, there are probably 10 or more different types of bread and offerings that they are going to try to target to their customers. And, different people will want maybe different offerings. It looks like there's going to be some different uses. So just kind of appealing to maybe a more broad audience or customer base. Okay, so margins is the second piece of our economic model. And as a reminder, the margins look at what is the true cost of doing business. So your variable costs are what you needed to produce that product. So it is in proportion to how many units you are selling or how many services you are providing. This is your cost of goods sold. It could also be cost of services sold, depending on if you have a physical product or a service. And this is going to look at the difference between the price you are charging your customers and the costs associated with making that specific product. So we want to look at how much is it costing me to get my product into the hands of my customer. And then these are going to go up. Every additional product, these costs are going to go up in proportion. If we know how much it costs us to make the specific product or service, then we can figure out pricing for that. How much should we charge our customers for that? You could add a simple markup to it. I do another presentation on pricing that kind of talks about some of those implications. But this is kind of where the price setting can come in to play. I like to give the example of the Costco chickens because they sell them for like $4, but it costs them more than $4 to make the chickens. They are willing to take the loss on their margins. They know that their margins are not profitable for the chickens because when everyone comes into Costco, they don't leave with just a chicken. They end up with a whole cart full of $150 worth of stuff. So the chicken is like the loss leader, so it gets people into the store. It's maybe a little risky that their one product is not totally profitable, but the overall business model is. And when we are thinking about adding a markup or thinking about our margins, it's kind of important to consider what fixed expenses we have, because there needs to be enough of the margin to cover all of the fixed expenses. At that point where all of our fixed costs are covered, we will reach our break even, and anything beyond that goes towards generating a profit. So it's really important to know and to help strategize too. Where do we want to be at price point so that we can cover all of our fixed expenses? Now, if you don't have a lot of fixed expenses, you'll probably reach your break even quite a bit faster. So again, different risk implications with that. We talk about that with operating leverage in a couple slides too. So that's a little sneak peek. So this is graphically what is happening with a break-even point. So the blue line is going to be your sales. So over time, your sales are going to increase. The red line is looking at your total expenses. So this is including your cost of goods sold or cost of services sold and your fixed expenses. So that's why it's a little staggered there. So right in the middle of the screen, that intersection is going to be your break-even point. Anything that is going to be below that is you are operating at a loss, but anything above that intersection is where you earn profit. So it's really important to know, okay, so I need to be at, let's call it 7,000 units in order to reach my break-even point. Great. So then me as a business owner, I can continue to monitor where I'm at with my progress and see if I am going to hit that break even that I need to. And if not, maybe I need to look at cutting my expenses, or maybe I could increase my prices. So there's a variety of different things that could be adjusted if a business owner doesn't feel like they're going to hit their break even. So it is an important figure to know related to the margins aspect of the economic model. So here is an example of a business that is a high versus low margin. So now I must be hungry or something, because we were talking about bakeries before, and now we're talking about just general restaurants. So we are going to talk about a fast food burger place and then also a fancier farm-to-table bistro. So the typical pricing structure, let's just call it $8 at the fast food place and then $25 for the farm to table. So if I am the fast food place, I am able to get my ingredients in bulk. I may be using some autonomous processes with my delivering of those services and food. My packaging I can buy in large quantities, so that does not end up making much of a difference. So my cost to deliver a burger to a customer is $5.50. So the margin, so if I subtract 8 minus 550, ends up being 250 or 31%. So for every burger I am selling, $2.50 is going to cover my overhead. It's going to take me a little while to cover all of that, because when we're only moving the needle forward $2.50, it takes a lot to cover rent or a building. So the strategy here is that there is going to be high customer volume, fast turnover. So you reach the break-even point when you serve more of the customers, and you have to serve a lot of them in order to reach the break-even, because just a smaller percentage is going to cover your fixed expenses. So on the flip side of that, let's say the farm-to-table bistro uses local meats. They have a Michelin star chef, or whatever you want to refer to their expertise as. They use fresh local produce. So their cost to deliver is about $8. So if we subtract the price that the customers are paying and the cost that it took me to produce that entree, I get $16, or about 68%. So for every dish I'm serving, $16 is going to cover my overhead. So likely I am going to be selling in lower volumes, but people are going to be staying longer because they want more of that experience. If I'm paying $25 for an entree, it should be much more of an experience, enjoyable. I'll want to talk to the wait staff, kind of get my money's worth out of it. And, you can probably, the business could get by with having quite a fewer customers. Maybe they only need a couple dozen or something to cover their break even there. So not necessarily one is better than the other. It all depends on kind of what strategy you are deciding to pursue, because both can be done very successfully. So volume, we kind of touched on this a little bit with our example, but this is looking at the number of products or services you are selling or providing. I will say that with services, there is one limiting constraint usually, and it ends up being your time. So if I am making ice cream, I can always make more ice cream, get more customers. But with services, if I am charging billable hours, there's only so many hours unless if I hire more people that I could provide service to. So that ends up being one of the maybe constraints to volume a little bit. But really we're looking at if it's like how it is going to be related to the margins. You will reach your break-even point quite a bit faster if you sell more, or if you don't sell as much, maybe you have higher margin so that you can reach your break-even point faster. So they can all kind of be played around with. And finally, volume, we are looking at what is the total number of sales dollars that will be needed to cover all of the expenses. So this includes your ingredients, your labor, your rent, marketing, everything that goes into running the business, whether it is fixed or variable. How much do we need to sell to earn that profit that we want? Okay, so high versus low volume. We're still sticking in the food world, and that's okay. We are going to talk about coffee. I'm not a coffee drinker, but I know these examples quite well. So Starbucks, the well-known massive franchise, or they're not a franchise, they're privately owned. And then Joe on the Go is a little coffee cart that goes to different events. So Starbucks, they are open, I think, like really early in the morning all the way till I think you could still go to Starbucks at 6:00 at night. So they're open for long hours. They get lots of foot traffic because everyone knows their name. They have branding that goes with it. Everyone wants a Starbucks cup. And they're pretty fast overall at getting products to the customers. You know, sometimes there might be a line, but in general, they're pretty fast. So they are able to have really high and support really high volumes of customers coming in and out. Now, Joe on the Go is maybe going to be hired to make coffee for specific events for short windows of time. They don't have as much overhead expense because it's a little coffee cart and maybe less employees. Maybe it's just one employee barista making the coffees. So they don't necessarily need to sell as much coffee as Starbucks does in order to reach their profitability because they have fewer expenses. So they can support having those lower volumes. Okay, so then operating leverage. So this is the kind of final piece of the puzzle. And we're looking at the relationship between your variable and fixed costs. So if you have higher fixed costs, you're going to have higher operating leverage. And then if you have higher variable costs, maybe you'll have lower operating leverage. And lower operating leverage means you have higher flexibility, maybe some less risk because it's going to take less units sold to reach your break-even point. If you have higher fixed costs, so higher operating leverage, it might mean greater risk because you're going to require more of the products or services you are selling to cover all of those expenses. However, once you reach that point of break even, then you'll probably be more profitable because your costs are already covered. So everything beyond that is just going towards profit. So it can take a little while if you have higher fixed costs. So I try to advise business owners that are starting to try to minimize their fixed expenses. So we don't want to be signing rent for a giant space that you can't fully occupy yet because that just gets expensive to and hard to maintain month after month. So if you can start smaller it's less risky, and you have more kind of flexibility to reinvest into the business and grow and expand from there. Okay, so I've kind of talked a little bit about variable and fixed costs as well, but I just want to make sure everyone understands the difference. This also relates to the break-even point that I touched on, but your fixed costs, so this is also known as your overhead. It is not going to change in proportion to how many units I am selling. So this includes examples like rent. So I am always going to pay $5,000 a month for rent for my space. Eventually, I might need a bigger space because I outgrew it, and then my rent might go up, but it's still a fixed cost because it's not in direct proportion to how many I am selling. My insurance, generally payroll, can be fixed. Variable costs, as I said, cost of goods sold, cost of services sold, your COGS or your costs. As sales go up, these costs are also going up. So all of your raw materials, shipping, any other inputs that are going directly into the final product will count as your variable costs. The little images on the screen show for fixed costs, if I am selling 10 or 40 units, it is the same. If I am then looking at my variable costs, if I'm selling 10 or 40, it's going to go up in proportion with my units sold. Okay, so here's just another example. Sorry, the picture kind of cut off on that last little bit there, but looking at your variable versus fixed. So again, just another example. Your variable costs, your raw materials, credit card fees, direct materials, direct labor. On the other hand, your fixed costs, rent, insurance, management salaries, utilities, generally marketing, office supplies, I'm going to be paying $50 because I need new envelopes to mail out bills or something like that for office supplies. So they might change. So marketing, one month I might spend $200, the next month $500, but it is still considered a fixed cost because although the amount is changing, it's maybe not in direct proportion like credit card fees, where every time I do a credit card transaction, I have to pay 3%. Okay, so kind of going through all of the different elements, the 4 elements, I'm going to give you another example. We will look at Trader Joe's versus Walmart. So now we are in the grocery store world, and we'll talk through each of these options. So Trader Joe's, they are a low volume, high margin grocery store. So the audience for Trader Joe's is probably a little bit different than the customer for Walmart. Trader Joe's is probably looking at, I think, people without families because they don't make a lot of stuff in bulk. They also have a lot of trendy items, limited release. So they might be targeting maybe a younger crowd that finds their stuff on social media. Walmart might be targeting the families, the convenient shoppers, people who just want to get everything at one store because they have everything. So looking at Trader Joe's, we'll just go through all of the examples here. So low volume, high margin. So their revenue drivers, they have everything in Trader Joe's is private label. So it's Trader Joe's brand. You can't get it anywhere else. Their stores are pretty small, so they have limited SKUs. And like I mentioned, a lot of novelty, kind of trendy items. So their margins, they have high gross margin. So they're competing on doing something different because of their revenue drivers are based in novelty, trends. They're competing on differentiation and charging people more because they are doing something different. We can estimate 25 to 30% margin on their products. So their volume, because they have limited SKUs, smaller store, maybe fewer transactions. They're kind of looking more for that curated, smaller kind of demand. So operating leverage. So the final piece of the puzzle, smaller stores, not as much staffing. They're pretty cost efficient with their expenses. So their operating leverage is pretty moderate. So then on the flip side, Walmart, again, both can be correct. Both are very successful businesses. It all just kind of depends on which strategy is making the most sense for the intended audience. So Walmart, they are high volumes, but low margins. So Walmart earns their money when they are selling a lot of products. So their revenue drivers, they have everything under the sun. You could get all of your groceries there. You could get your kids' bikes, clothes, shoes, you name it. You could probably find it at Walmart. So they have very broad range of products, electronics, pharmacy, all of the fun things. Sometimes you never know what you're going to find at Walmart. But then their margins are pretty thin because they are competing on the basis of price. So they are trying to compete on, hey, we're the low cost provider. They have really efficient supply chain, so they're able to purchase in bulk and then pass maybe some of the savings on to their customers. So that's how they are competing. We can estimate their margins maybe 10 to 15% on average, but some products will obviously be different. And then volume, Walmart is always busy. Oh my goodness. Their Walmart parking lot is full, lots of traffic. They are everywhere. It's like you can drive almost anywhere, and on your way home, you can say, I'll stop at Walmart. So they have national presence. They do millions of transactions. So their volume is really high. That's where they earn their profit, because they also have big stores. So they need to cover a lot of overhead with their margins. So this is just an example, and I'll kind of go through it a little quickly here, but this is looking at some coffee. So currently at the price we are proposing and our variable costs and fixed costs, we're not going to be earning any profit, which is not bad. So if I sell 3,200 cups of coffee per month, and you can see all the expenses on the screen, that is where, okay, my profit is 0. Now, me as a business owner, maybe I would think, well, that's not good enough. How can we make some adjustments so that I can earn the profit that I am wanting? Well, there are some options. So this slide is looking at, okay, if I increase my sales volume to 4,000 instead of 3,200, I now earn a profit of $1,000. It's a little more than that, but I'm rounding. So maybe me as a business owner think, wow, I can totally do that. Maybe that's just being open a couple extra hours, maybe doing some more marketing. But if I can increase my sales just a little bit, then I'm already earning profit. That's a good kind of data point to know. It's because, again, for decision making, am I on the right track? Do I need to make adjustments? How can I reach my break even, cover all of my expenses? So this is looking at what happens if we make some adjustments with our margins. So we increase the price just slightly, not too much that our customers would get upset, and we look at lowering our variable costs. So this could come from maybe switching suppliers, or maybe you're ordering more in bulk, so you get quantity discounts. But this is just looking at what is that going to do to our bottom line if we adjust our variable costs. And now we're making over $2,000 in profit. So if those little changes, they seem so small, just increasing the price by a quarter, but when we take into consideration the volume, it ends up being quite a bit bigger impact to the business's profitability. Okay, so with all of that being said, that's the economic model. Fidel might have some questions for me. I'm happy to connect with anyone, kind of talk through all of these pieces in greater detail. You can have my email address, and I'm happy to connect and talk about it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kiley, for that very valuable presentation. Let's now take some time to explore the key concepts through a few questions. And of course, now the floor is open to our audience. If you have any questions for Kiley, please feel free to tap them down in the chat and we'll be able to address them as we go. Let's begin with the foundations. Why is it critical for small businesses to understand the relationship between revenue, margins, and volume, as well as operating leverage when building their business model?
Yeah, so it is important to consider all four of those pieces because it's going to inform, okay, is this going to be a sustainable business model? So am I going to be able to operate this going forward? I always like to look at the break-even point. So the intersection kind of all of those to see, can I afford to cover all of my expenses? Does it make sense for me to be doing my business? Because there are some times when the volumes get to be so high in order to cover all of the expenses that it maybe is not reasonable. It doesn't make sense. So then it's kind of a good strategic opportunity to think, okay, if I can't sell or if it's beyond my capacity of that volume I need to cover all of my expenses, can I adjust my pricing? Can I look at my expenses? What are my margins like? So it gives a good kind of self-reflection opportunity for the business to see, is it viable? Can I sustain it long term? Is it worth pursuing?
Exactly. It gives you like a good overview of the entire business, and like you get to ask yourself like we say, is it viable? Is this a good business idea, and should I pursue this even further? Thank you so much.
And they're all pretty simple concepts. So thinking about how many of a product do I need to sell, thinking about my what I'm going to be selling, my margins, maybe that one gets a little more complex, maybe operating leverage, but those are all pretty simple concepts that a business owner can understand as they're evaluating maybe one opportunity versus another to get started. It can also even be used for growth too. Maybe there's a new opportunity that a business wants to expand in, and those four things can kind of be taken into consideration too for evaluating that.
Exactly. And that leads to the next question, because so many business owners are unclear about this. What does it actually mean for a business to be profitable versus simply moving money? And why does that distinction matter?
Yes. Okay. So profitability comes from all of our expenses are paid and there is money remaining. It is important to know because sometimes it can feel like we are making money. This happens a lot with industries that have delay of payment. So I am a therapist. I'm a physical therapist. I'm providing service. I have to bill to insurance. Insurance doesn't reimburse me for 3 months maybe. So in that period, I will need to float my expenses. I still have to pay my staff during those 3 months while I'm waiting for insurance to give me the actual revenue. And sometimes it can feel like we're just moving money because, okay, the money came in to me as a physical therapist and I had already paid my expenses, but did I leave anything left for me to be profitable so that I can reinvest to the business? I have a little bit of a cushion. I can continue to grow. Maybe I want to open another physical therapy practice. Moving money around is just kind of like having to pay all of your expenses without keeping track of where it's going, how much came in. So you're just kind of going from account to account. It's kind of like the saying of like, rub Peter to pay Paul, or whatever that saying is. So you borrow money from a friend, and then, you have to borrow money from someone else, and you're not actually keeping anything for yourself.
Thanks for shedding some light on that. That makes perfect sense. So let's build on that. You mentioned earlier the idea that businesses should create value for both customers and owners. What does that mean in terms of long-term sustainability?
Yeah, so the value for the customers comes from the products or services that I am delivering. They are a customer because they see value in the business. It might also end up being investors down the road. So the owners see value in terms of economic return. We use profitability a lot, could also look at positive cash flow, retained earnings. So there's a variety of different ways to look at what are the owners getting out of the business. And it's important when you're thinking about the financial model. Yes, I am delivering a product to my customers. I have customers, they find value in it. How does myself as the owner find value in the business too, so that I can be sustainable? A lot of businesses long-term, or I guess short-term, the owners don't end up paying themselves because they're paying for all of the other expenses. So they're kind of like an afterthought. And then I think where the business can be sustainable is when the owner is able to, okay, all of my bills are paid. I'm now able to pay myself, and have that be the long-term kind of plan for the business.
Thank you. You're absolutely right, because there are so many business owners who are kind of like stuck in that area where, like, they're trying to grow their business, but essentially all they're doing is just, moving money around, paying those bills, and they're still being hopeful, right? So I can just push a little bit more, 6 more months, a year or more. But at the core, like, is this business really sustainable? How much longer are you just going to sit there and keep robbing Peter to pay Paul?
Yeah. And sometimes it's like not comfy to be in this position where, okay, all of my bills are paid, but what is next? So as a business owner, you kind of need to be thinking, growth is going to happen. How are we going to make it happen? If I don't have anything left over from my operations, then I'm not going to be able to market to new customers, maybe try a new product, expand my service offerings. You might not be able to reach that growth point if you are always operating at your break-even point.
Exactly. Couldn't agree with you more. Well, now let's move into revenue. Every business owner talks about growing income, but what are your primary revenue drivers, and why, and how should those align with the business overall capacity? Can you please shed some light on that?
Yeah, so the revenue drivers it can go in a variety of ways. So if I am selling swimsuits, for example, my business is probably going to be really popular in the summer. Okay, but then as winter is happening, people aren't really buying swimsuits. So maybe it is within my capacity, because I don't have a lot going on in the wintertime at my swimsuit shop. So then maybe it's within my capacity to look at selling snowshoes too, or snowsuits. People need to go get their ski gear somewhere. So maybe my swimsuit shop becomes a snow gear shop in the winter months, so that I am adding a revenue driver. Yes. I'm also diversifying, making it a little bit more of a safe option, because I'll have maybe revenue all throughout the months. And then it maybe helps with sustainability too, because I can maybe predict that a little bit. I don't need to get a working capital loan or a line of credit or something to kind of cover those winter months when nobody's buying swimsuits. So it can depend on how busy people feel, because if I am the opposite of that, I am having swimsuits, purses, you name a clothing item, I am selling it. Well, that can be a lot to find suppliers for. It's also a lot to market because you're probably targeting, let's just talk like men's business clothes versus the swimsuits. Those are different customers and you're going to reach them in a different way. So it takes a lot of capacity to figure out, how do I have my customers see value in what I'm offering? So in that scenario, maybe it's, okay, I need to figure out what my core offerings are because I'm doing too much and it's so hard to be good at everything. So maybe I look and I see, okay, so the men's business clothes, I don't really see a lot of sales for. Maybe that's not my core offering. I'm going to stop doing that. I'm going to focus on these couple of other revenue drivers so I can have the time and dedication to do them well. So there's kind of trade-offs to either having too few or too many, but that's kind of where maybe the experience of the business owner comes into play. So if they have something that they know really well, I think that's a great starting place. And then from there, it's much easier to grow and add more revenue drivers than it is, okay, I'm going to try to figure out how to do everything all at once. That's a little overwhelming. Maybe it's a little harder to get that started too.
Okay. That's awesome. Now, what's your take on this? And I think you have already kind of briefly answered part of this question. Why can focusing on fewer well-managed revenue streams actually be more effective than choosing too many?
So in that case, we're kind of going for quality versus quantity. So if I know my 2 revenue streams are well managed, then I am effectively targeting my customers. I'm converting them. I am managing my costs. All of my costs that I have in my business are tied to those 2 revenue streams. Anything else, I don't need those expenses. So it saves money maybe on the expense side. And me as the business owner can dedicate all of my time to those direct to businesses and really be the expert. I think it comes back to figuring out your target audience as well, because strategically, it's a lot easier to say, okay, I am a company that does these 2 things. I am Coca-Cola. I make soft drink products. If I am Procter & Gamble, I make a whole large suite of a variety of different products. I have toothpaste and first aid products, and there's some commonalities, but they do a lot of different things. So the business owner needs to have expertise in all of those different segments in order to be able to reach their audience effectively, grow those segments too. Whereas if I can just focus on the soft drinks, then I think I like it's easier to manage with time, I think.
That makes sense. So from a growth strategy standpoint, why is it important for business owners to evaluate whether their revenue streams are manageable, profitable, and scalable?
So if this kind of goes back to the Costco chickens a little bit. So if you have a lot of revenue drivers and none of them are profitable, that's concerning because you're not going to reach that growth. The business is just not sustainable. If you have several profitable revenue streams like Costco, they have lots of revenue generating items that they are willing to take the loss on the chickens. It's because they have a lot of different offerings that they can kind of take that risk with that mix, because at the end of the day, when everything gets added together, they are still profitable. So as growth is happening for a business, it's kind of important to evaluate, okay, which of our segments are important because they are helping to earn a profit. I think for a lot of restaurants, looking at like to-go orders, if people have a problem with like third-party apps because they placed an order, I don't know, maybe the order didn't get picked up, so they paid for the food. Is it worthwhile to keep having those extra expenses? Should we get rid of that, or look at maybe doing delivery ourselves? So there's a lot of considerations for, okay, I'm ready to take that next phase of growth, that next step of growth, and what can I do to make sure that my revenue is covering all of my expenses in the way that it should.
Awesome. That's great. Let's talk about margins. We know margins determine the health of one's operation. Why is understanding your margins critical, and how does it help you determine the true cost of doing business?
Yeah, so I think the margins are important because it really informs quickly if I am pricing my product effectively, if my costs are controlled. I'll talk about like the egg example. This was like a year or so ago that the cost of eggs went up a really crazy amount. So businesses were having to pay for their supplies to increase, but they were trying to figure out, okay, what do I need to do to make my business sustainable? Is this going to be a temporary thing? Can I absorb the cost? A couple of businesses increased their prices. They just did a flat price increase. There were some that did like a surcharge for, okay, eggs are increasing, so anything with eggs, we're going to add 50 cents to it or whatever, because maybe they were not in a position to be able to absorb that increased cost. So understanding your margin is really important because it's going to determine, okay, how much is going to cover my fixed expenses? I can't really do a lot with my fixed expenses. Once I sign my lease, I'm probably locked in for 5 years, and it's going to be the same. But if I don't know, maybe my ingredients are going up, like the eggs, then maybe I think about increasing my price or whatever so that I can continue to keep my restaurant going, operating, covering all of my expenses. So variable costs are important. You're kind of off on the wrong foot if you don't understand your variable costs, because then your pricing might not be accurate. And if you aren't even covering your variable costs with your pricing, then you're definitely not covering your fixed costs either, which can be challenging if you are trying to either grow or just be a sustainable business.
That's very important. Thank you so much. And then again, break even, something people overlook, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Kiley. We're running very close to the end here. So before we wrap up, here are a few upcoming MAC events to mark on your calendar. Our MAC roll call, it's next. Our next MAC roll call event will be held on June 10th at 5 p.m. with Okra African Grill. Our Grind and Grounds will be held on Thursday, July 9th at 8 a.m. with NEF and JP Morgan Chase. More information will be shared on that. Our next Power Hour will be held on Thursday, June 18th at 5:30 p.m. with Grow with Google. Our next Rising CEOs program is currently open, so make sure you look out for that on our social media platforms. And if you have any teenagers between the ages of 14 and 19, make sure you sign them up for this, because this will be a great opportunity for them. The MAC Accelerator for Cohort 2026 will be launching on July 1st, so be on the lookout for that as well. The MAC Foundation Scholarship Drive is ongoing, so if you can, make sure you donate for that. The MAC Foundation nominations are ongoing and will close on Friday, July 31st. So make sure you nominate any organizations or any individuals that are doing great things in the community so that we can make sure that we award them at the Gratitude Gala in November. The 2026 Gratitude Gala will be held on Saturday, November 7th at the MCC 4th Omaha campus at 5:30 p.m. The Global Agora X by MAC will be held on January 27, 2027. January 21st, 2027. More information will be coming up on that. We appreciate your continued support as we work to empower our community through business education and economic opportunity. Kiley, thank you again so much for sharing your time and wisdom with us today. Your insights into building a profitable model will definitely help our members take practical steps towards growth and sustainability. To our audience, thank you for joining us for this Power Hour Business Development Virtual Live Stream, proudly presented by Google. If you'd like more information about the MAC Chamber or ways to get involved, please visit our website or connect with us directly. Have a great evening, and we look forward to seeing you next time.